Beyond the Ghostlight.
Hey!
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Hey.
Yep, and welcome to Nick Can't Make His Green Screen Work. I mean, Beyond the Ghostlight. Hello. This is a great episode we have for you today. I'm Nick. And obviously, as always, I'm joined with Luna and Tori.
Hi. Good to see you. Hello. Shout out real quick to Bridget Gappa and Victoria. You're in LA right now, right?
I am in LA right now. So I was very much inspired by the fact that we are mostly virtual right now. And we actually went to go see a good friend of ours perform for the first time in Detroit in a long time, about 2 weeks ago. It was Eric. He's Miss Bouvier, in case you are familiar. And he actually moved down to Florida a few months ago, but he came back to Detroit for a one night only and was telling us all about how he's got to fly here for a show and there for a show. And I was like, wait a minute. We can do this now, can't we?
Mobile.
Why not? Right?
Go mobile.
So for mobile, I'm actually in LA right now. I'm broadcasting live from our Airbnb, super fancy.
Ooh.
And we'll be driving back to Detroit across the country. So I'll be throwing stuff on the interwebs, letting you guys know what's going on.
All the pictures, road trip, get that fever. Like, I have so much cabin fever right now. So please give us pictures to live through vicariously. It'd be great.
Not a problem.
Yeah, no, that'd be awesome. So,
Look at that.
hey, I pulled out of my old costume box. Let's see, this morning, an old friend that I haven't pulled out in 2 years. I realized it's been 2 years. Yeah, it is March weekend, right? Or it would be either this weekend or next weekend. Yes, and I just want to really quickly throw a little love to this color coordination happening today. Looking very good, everybody. But with that, Nick, do you want to maybe tell us a little bit about our special guest today and what is the Marche de NAIN Rouge that we may be having a guest on for?
Well, I think we can. We'll have our guest Francis talk a little more in detail. But for those of us out there who have done this for several years, and that's a lot of us, the Marche de NAIN Rouge is an annual event, or it was an annual event until last year.
It is an annual event coming back.
COVID, but it'll be back. Which takes place at the beginning of March. It's a march in March, and is built around the NAIN Rouge. And we will get on to who the NAIN Rouge is for those who are unfamiliar in just a minute when we bring Francis on. So yeah.
I think that's a good reason to bring him on right on now, huh?
I think so.
Hi.
Hey,
How are you?
Francis.
How's it going? I'm feeling very theatric right now.
Ooh, I love your hat.
As the sun's going down. Yes, can you see it?
Yes.
Well, yes. Well, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's a pleasure, and thank you for making one of my personal favorite theater festivals, street festivals, live events in Detroit every year. It's so much fun, and we'll be there in spirit this year, and obviously next year. It's just going to be twice the banger. So
yeah, we are also very sad that we had to cancel, but COVID and these things and global pandemic 2 years in a row. We were one of the first events to cancel and now are probably one of the early events to cancel 2 times.
Right. That's
So
so
we are bummed about it, but we're looking forward to great times ahead and safe times ahead, right? So that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
absolutely. And we'll talk a little bit. We'd love to ask how people can support right now, street festivals and things that we love to do while we're in this little hiatus. But maybe Nick, do you want to start us off? I know we had a couple questions prepped for our guest, and then audience. Hey, we've got one of the founders of the Marche du Nain Rouge here, so feel free to drop some questions right into those comment sections, y'all.
Absolutely. So, like I said, a lot of people know the name, but there's going to be a few people who are watching either now or later because this is viewable beyond the live stream, who might not know who Nain Rouge is. So let's fill us in a little bit about that.
Drop a little NAIN knowledge. Well,
exactly.
I may or may not personally know the name. I feel most people who do know the NAIN have had their own impression or feelings about the Nain Rouge. I mean, that is part of what makes the Nain Rouge such a great part of Detroit's history, right? You can interpret the Nain Rouge, you can feel the Nain Rouge, you can even see the Nain Rouge, or you can, show up to a festival and just say, what the hell is going, what are these people all here for? And not really get it. And that's fine too. So then the Nain Rouge, as we characterize the NAIN, is this somewhat malevolent character that we poke fun at, that pokes fun at us. It's this absurdist kind of tradition that has been created around the first legend of the city of Detroit, and that is really the starting point of the Nain Rouge. So in 1701, when the city got founded by Cadillac, and yes, it's that Cadillac, the Cadillac of Cadillac motor cars, Antoine de la Mole, right? He, there are different stories about him. Apparently, he was pretty full of himself. He was a colonialist from the court of Louis, the Sun King, and apparently a fast talker, was able to convince people of things and convince people that the king should fund this expedition into the interior of what was then becoming New France. And on his journey, he stopped at Quebec, because that had been previously established. And he was partying, I guess is the story, with some of his colleagues and fellow voyageurs, and a person, an old woman who claimed to be a soothsayer, and who is, I guess, known in Quebec as being, someone to maybe be part of a evening party, fortune teller kind of deal, was allowed into their party and said, Cadillac, I have, your fortune if you want to hear it. Obviously he being on his way to found great things and full of, colonial spirit and whatever else he was drinking, said, yeah, tell me what's going on. What do you think? And the story is that she tells of a great city that he'll found, but that he'll die penniless, and that he should regard the Nain Rouge. And Cadillac takes this or doesn't take it. Maybe he brushes it off. Maybe he, thinks more on the great city that he's going to found. But to die penniless, what's that about? So who knows what's going through his mind? But he travels on to what becomes Detroit, at the straits of the river between. It's actually just a strait. It's not technically a river, between St. Clair and Lake Erie, and founds Detroit. And after, I guess, a couple of years, it's not right away, but after a couple of years, the story goes that he does see the Nain Rouge, and the Nain Rouge crosses him. This is a creature that was described as being Dwarfish. Nain Rouge means red dwarf in French, so red dwarf. And it crosses his path, and Cadillac and the Nain Rouge kind of have a tete-a-tete. And there are some accounts of the Nain Rouge, calling out Cadillac for maybe being there, or I don't know what, tipping over cows. I'm not really sure, but they have words. And it ends up with Cadillac driving the Nain Rouge away with his stick, and the Nain Rouge then turning around and cursing Cadillac for all time. And in doing so, he curses Detroit, curses Cadillac. And in part, the fortune teller was right, because he did sort of have this fall from grace. Cadillac did. He was reprimanded by the crown and taken from Detroit and put into the governorship of what was then Louisiana, I suppose, and then brought back to France. And he did sort of lose out on Detroit and lose some of his fortune, and that part of it did come true. And of course, Detroit would grow incredibly to be one of the biggest cities in the country, but far after Cadillac was there. So the Nain Rouge has, cursed Detroit since the beginning. And I'll just say one more thing about the Nain Rouge. There's these traditions of the French of having these sort of spirits, lutins, that you're supposed to, acknowledge or regard. And they kind of, they're also show up during like war, or they basically, they can sort of take uppity people down a notch, or they are just mischievous. They're the ones that, rattle the cages at night, or, kick your cow over or whatever. And then there are these traditions of Native Americans as well, which, there are spirits that are kind of imbued in the lands and waters and other places in and around what's become Detroit. Of course, there were people here before the French, founded it. So people think it's kind of a mashup of a few different things. And it's basically what I love about the Nain Rouge is that it's probably not a nice thing, but it also, you can't really put your finger on it. And what we do is we use the Nain Rouge as a way to sort of poke fun at ourselves and have a day where we can all sort of let loose. And it's this absurdist. It's kind of the Nain Rouge takes the place of a kind of fool that leads the fools to a party, and that's kind of how we've come upon our version of the Nain Rouge, and so that's what we do, and that's what we've done for the last couple of years we haven't, but since 2010.
I kind of love in that story that the soothsayer essentially says, Cadillac, you're going to find a great city, but you'll be ruined and die penniless. And Cadillac is like, cool, I'm going to found a big city. And penniless and that. No, city.
Yeah, the city part. Screw that other stuff. Whatever. Right.
That's that selective listening right there. That's
yes,
awesome.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
Well, let me ask you. So one of the things that Detroit does not have is Mardi Gras. But we do have the Marche. So do you think that it sort of fits that evolutionary niche somewhat?
Absolutely. I think that kind of hits the nail on the head. What we tried to do, my friend Joe Yule and I, who were sort of the folks that started this conversation, then pretty quickly with some other crazy people who I don't know how they're still involved, really wanted to think about what Mardi Gras would look like in Detroit if it had already and always existed. And that was kind of the conceit around using this legend, this thing that goes back to the very beginning of the city, as a way to connect the dots. We are, as a city, Detroit is actually older than New Orleans by about 10 years. And it's the same kinds of sort of cultural outputs in weird ways. You know, the two places are very similar, even though they look very different. You know, think about music and the sort of, you know, the huge contribution that music has made, that Detroit music has made to the world through Motown and R&B and techno and other types too. And think about, you know, jazz in New Orleans. Think about the other arts and cultural traditions and the mashup of peoples that sort of turn the everyday experience of living and working in the city into really amazing artistic tradition. And so, you know, to think about New Orleans and having Mardi Gras, that really was our starting point. And thinking about, you know, a springtime, you know, it's not quite Easter, but it's actually, because we're colder, you know, later, but, you know, spring is a little after Mardi Gras usually, but it plays with the same idea of renewal and rebirth and sort of, you know, thinking about the year ahead and coming out to really celebrate your city. So it's a little bit more, I guess, slightly more pagan in that New Orleans is based on sort of the Christian or Catholic, you know, traditions, but it's definitely got that vibe. And it is, you know, before the auto industry. It is before why a lot of people came within the last 100 years. And it gives people this kind of really wide berth to like figure out how they want to come and how they want to self-express. And that's really what excites us about how the Marche can be a thing that everybody can participate in. That is truly why we wanted to do it, to give people a sense of possibility and ownership in this kind of weird story and this kind of, you know, cipher, this Sphinx-like thing that you can sort of play with and sort of make your own.
Sure. And that, you know, everybody, I love that you guys in general have always embraced that with the legend, that everyone comes at it from different, you know, is it a harbinger? Is it a, you know, somebody who creates chaos in the city? This idea of the NAIN itself is something that's so open to interpretation.
Yeah.
That everyone can come together, have fun, celebrate, put on a mask, and, you know, walk down the main streets behind a Roachmobile, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we didn't sort of get into how the Nain Rouge has appeared over time, and how, you're right, you know, there's this idea that the Nain Rouge is the sort of harbinger of doom. But what does that really mean? And you know, is the Nain Rouge just sort of, you know, is it causing these things? Is it watching these things? It's fun to think about. We sort of apply the straw man theory that, you know, in order to have the Nain Rouge have a latest evil plan to destroy Detroit, therefore, you know, the Nain Rouge is to blame for all of these things. But other people think other things about, you know, the Nain Rouge being there just because he likes to revel in Detroit's demise and has nothing to do himself with it. He's just sort of like happy to see it because he, you know, remembered that original offense from the stick of Cadillac. So it's definitely a fun thing to play with and think about and have people interpret. Also, as the years go by, you know, there are different things that are on people's minds and different things that they've gone through. You know, personally, we try to make it current based on, you know, what's been in the news or what people have been thinking about. So it's that also, I think, with the Mardi Gras tradition is something that we try to tap into. People need a day of this. People need time for this. Carnival is happening. It's a tradition of you know, street theater, of people letting their life loose on the street that day where anything goes. And it's an important part of culture that needs to be you know, celebrated and allowed.
Amen. And yeah, I think it's interesting, you know, in that kind of carnival spirit, you know, obviously you guys have had a couple years to kind of take some time, rethink, regroup. What do you see this event kind of evolving and expanding and growing into in the next few years?
I would love to see it grow even beyond the day. I mean, the great thing about Mardi Gras is that there's so many different parades. There's multiple parades, so it isn't even just on Mardi Gras Day. It's the time leading up to Mardi Gras, and then throughout the year. We also timed it so that St. Patrick's Day is a big parade in Detroit, and it's usually a week after. Sometimes it's 2 weeks, depending on when spring falls. But if we could sort of connect those dots to have more parades happen, that would be amazing. Even throughout the year, one of our partners, Caribbean Mardi Gras Productions, and Ralph Taylor, who had done for many years the Caribbean Festival, and then so there's a few festivals he did, but also that was in August, and the African World Fest, he was part of that as well. That happened in New Center. But when it's warmer out, having neighborhood parades happen more often, giving kids an opportunity to make a costume and come out. I mean, it's just such a wide open opportunity for celebrating a place and celebrating a neighborhood, celebrating a day, whatever it is. It gives people a sense of possibility and hope and joy that we need a lot more, I think, frankly, in the world. So I could see it growing and connecting some of these dots. It's hard to know, or say like, this is what I want to see out of it, because part of it has been that it's grown organically. It's still a very shoestring operation. And, I would like to think that it lives beyond the folks that are involved in it now. But who knows? I would love to see it grow. It has grown. And this pandemic hiatus, I think, has pent up some of our need for, this kind of activity even more. Yeah.
Coming together as a community and celebrating things together. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So Kurt actually asks in the feed.
Are we getting people watching this to give questions? That's great.
Oh yeah,
Awesome.
Absolutely. We really encourage it too. We really love involving people in processes and in the things that we do. And Kurt was saying, any thoughts on when is responsible to, reopen? When is that going to be a? When will you know that it's a good time?
It's a really good question, and I think a lot of so I I'm not the final word on this stuff because I just do this one event. Some people, it's some people's life, blood, and unfortunately, that whole world of the arts and festivals has really, it's just been devastated. So I'm not as tuned in as some people are, but I think the general sense is that the city will open up more of these kinds of things once a significant portion of the population has been vaccinated. We work very closely with the city to, we are a public event. That's always been one of my key goals in making the Marche happen every year, is working closely with the city to get an event permit, because we're on the street, we have police involved, we have fire involved. So the city has, understandably been quite concerned about this whole pandemic thing. And when we, as I was saying in the before we got on, about last year, and sort of like the first, we were one of the first events to cancel along with St. Patrick's Day. And once St. Patrick's Day parade did cancel, we were like, that was a signal to me that we couldn't hold the event. And the city concurred. It wasn't official yet, but the city was basically like, yes, we're shutting these events down. I think once a significant portion of the population is vaccinated, whatever that is herd immunity, 70 to 80%. Once we can sort of quantify that, I think there'll be some allowance for some of these events. we've just canceled again. The parade would have happened March 20. God, I don't even know, but it's in a couple of weeks. We're a couple of weeks out, and I would hope that by next year we will be able to hold an event that looks something like what we're used to. Yeah. Right? Knock on wood.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, perfect segue actually into our next question, which is kind of the same question, but expanding upon it. This is the second year since the institution of the Marche, and the second year since the institution of Marche has been halted thanks to COVID.
Right.
So let me ask you, what do you think the effect of that has been on the Marche?
Well, it's funny. I mean, if you take the NAIN Rouge, that is, we're, technically every year there's a sort of narrative that we have a story of what, the latest evil plot the NAIN Rouge has. And last year, or the last year we did it, we actually kind of made up with the NAIN a little bit, and we let them into the party, and then COVID happened. So I don't know what that means, that maybe we had the right approach before. So all to say, I don't know. I hope that we can get back on track. I think people want this kind of thing. I know that people, have been cooped up for so long. At the same time, we've explored a lot of different, like what we're doing right now, we might have done in person possibly before. I have to think that we have pushed technology kind of to a limit, and it's kind of taken a place of some of this stuff. So it's fascinating to be in this moment right now when you are a part of planning these kinds of events and thinking about what the pandemic has done to them, obviously, but also what has happened over that time in terms of technology, and thinking about how people get together and how you share things. I was part of a conference this past weekend, the Reinventisance. Maybe you were familiar with that, but it was basically about how creative events and these kinds of gatherings coming together has been affected, and what can be done going forward. And it's fascinating how people have responded. The virtual event, sort of Zoom Plus, I guess, or virtual dance parties. I've seen there was a dance party that ended that. People have made them fun and engaging and interactive, but there's still something that I think we're all missing, and that is, the kind of spontaneity of being, with a bunch of people. And it's hard for me to think that would ever be completely supplanted. So I have to think that these kinds of things will happen again. And we've been through this before as a society. This is not the first time that we've had to deal with a pandemic. And thankfully, we have things like this, which can connect us in ways, and to talk about, what we can do in the meantime, and how we can get over, the sort of the of today in the meantime.
Amen.
Yeah.
And cool opportunity to think, obviously once we're not stuck, in limbo, what this technology will continue to offer us as we put together festivals, live stream events, figure out ways to include people from across the globe. It's kind of mind-boggling. Once obviously stuck in the amber of the moment, nobody is exactly thrilled about it. But
I like that, amber of the moment. Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. I think
right.
We've broken open something, and it'll be interesting to see kind of how that I guess complements hopefully the live in person kind of thing.
Sure. So and kind of with that, I mean, obviously next year is going to be a banger. I mean,
absolutely. Are you kidding?
What are some of talk to us a little bit about maybe ways that you could foresee things expanding, like maybe some other smaller parades starting along maybe just the main strip. What thoughts do you have for 2022?
Well, I think the next year is about planning for a big thing, and that has been part of actually what the year has afforded. Thankfully we were able this past year to as I said earlier, we're a shoestring operation. We are grateful for the sponsors that allow us to proceed every year, and most of those are in the form of small businesses. And Midtown Inc. is also a big sponsor. We're a 501c3, so we get grants. We just applied to the NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts, for a grant. So we've been able to sort of triangulate a little bit, and thankfully we were able to get out of a lot of the costs that would have been otherwise part of last year's event. So we have a parade kind of in the bank, and we're going to spend this time this year to really focus and figure out what 2022 is going to look like, and include as much fun as we can. And we would love to talk to all of you about what we can do in the lead up. I think this is the time where we're like making connections and exploring opportunities and thinking about, venues and places that we can reactivate.
Absolutely. We probably need a crew of the Ibis or something.
Yes. This is something we've supported, and I would really love to see more of. The neighborhoods that have already, we've done this in the past for a number of years, but I love to see neighborhoods and organizations and come out in a theme. It's so great. We've had daffodils and people dressed as river water and just all sorts of really creative. One of my favorite is the Elias brothers. The big boy figure, and there's a crew that somehow got one of those and has painted it gold and blue, and they've just sort of themed it up. So one year they were Smurfs, and another year it was the Golden Idol. It's just really great to see people not just dress up for themselves, but think about stuff together and collectively, and to come out. So you all would be welcome to come out as the crew of Ibis. I would love to see that.
Which brings us on to other things like stories, because obviously the Marche has been going on for a decade now.
Yeah.
About.
Yeah.
So there's a lot
at
of
least
stories.
10 years.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stories out there, right? What are some of your favorite?
Oh my God, there's so
stories through that. We're all about the stories, so feel free to
I was thinking about this. There's a few stories that are just like, what am I doing? So one of my favorite ones was, you'd mentioned the cockroach, which I'll get to in a second. But the year before the cockroach was the Gon Karin, the fire-breathing dragon, that Doyle. So there's an artist we work with, Ryan Doyle. He goes by Doyle Huge, who had been at the recycling center with Matt and Amy, who's been really supportive of our efforts. He invited Doyle to come, and Doyle, who's not originally from Detroit, but I think Midwest, maybe Minnesota, had Burning Man connections, and had this really interesting, eclectic, kind of machinist approach to his art, big pieces. And one of them, he had access to Gon Karin, which was a huge 50-foot fire-breathing dragon, literally fire-breathing dragon, built on a pickup truck. No, a cement mixer or a dump truck chassis. I can't remember which. Just this huge structure. Do you remember seeing that? I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it's a dump truck. I think it was that sort of big square,
very big, large square base. And when we found out that he was going to do it, we were so excited. And he got it ready for the streets of Detroit, and it was at the recycling center. And one of the things that the police, this is part of what happens every year, is we have to figure out kind of where things are going to be and where things are going to come from and get things ready. And this huge fire-breathing dragon has to have a place before the parade. It has to, emerge from something. So we had arranged with Mario's, the restaurant, which there's a little alley between Mario's and a house that is next to Mario's. Mario's controls the alley, and the house has an apartment in it. And we had arranged to park the dragon there overnight, and that satisfied the police. The police didn't want it to be sort of hanging around on the street, blah, blah, blah. So when the thing was finally ready, which wasn't, it was later than we had anticipated, we all went down in convoy to this alley. And of course, there was a car parked in the alley. And it was in the way of parking the dragon overnight. And the thing happened, we're like, okay, so we knock on it. And this was maybe, I don't know, midnight or 1 a.m. when we were finally down there. So the poor guy was actually in bed sleeping. And it was only after we started towing his car, because we had no other choice, that he eventually came out and saved his car from the tow. And it wasn't awesome, but we parked the dragon where we said we would for the police so that it could be ready for the next day. And it was an incredible thing to see come out, and people loved it. They stood in awe of this thing on the streets. One of the things that happened, so the dragon could turn right better than it could turn left, if memory serves. So we also had planned it to just make right turns. And one of the turns was on a street in front of Avalon that we had said we would also have cleared, and that was part of the police, making sure that the streets are cleared. They put it, but there were people who had parked their cars on the other side of the street, and the dragon got stuck because it had these claws that were wider than a lane, and there was this crazy backup when we turned this into the street. And so people had to come, and an old man took it upon himself to lead a charge of bouncing cars. And does everybody know what that means? I didn't at the time. Apparently, if you get enough resonance in a car, push down, comes up, push down, comes up, push, you can move it. And they moved more than one car. They moved this way, just bounced them out of the way in order so that the dragon could proceed. And it was one of the greatest sort of coming together of minds in the moment to assuage the police. They were not happy that year, I can tell you that. But it worked out, and the dragon made it down to the Masonic Temple. We weren't allowed to go along some side streets after that. There are so many great stories. People are attracted to the parade for all sorts of different reasons. There's a wonderful artist who we work with, Nicole Lapointe, who's done some of the, she did this T-shirt design. She's done some of the artwork for the parade. We work with her on a children's book, an illustrations sort of coloring book. And there was a great series of back and forths where she came up with the idea of doing paper doll versions of the Nain Rouge, where you dress the Nain Rouge up, and he's kind of in his skivvies. And we had this awesome back and forth about including an outline of socks, athletic socks that he could stuff into his shorts to make himself look, slightly more endowed. So that made it into the coloring book final edition. There's athletic socks.
For the kids. For the kids.
Absolutely. We really lean into not people don't use PG-13 enough, I think, in the world. And I think that is really where our sweet spot is at least during the day.
Yeah.
I mean, there are parties that happen afterwards, but it is a family friendly, barely, and kids love it. The creative director who's on the board, Vince Keenan, has made wonderful banners that we have every year, and painting those has sort of fallen on my and others' shoulders. We have a great crew of volunteers. So when he first said, we're going to do it this way, and I was like, what the hell are you talking about, Vince? What he's like, we're going to project the image onto Tyvek, and Tyvek is strong and light, and you can, have anybody paint it. It's basically paint by numbers. I just thought it was like such a brilliant way to make something look. I mean, it is handmade, but he figured out how to do it in a way that is actually pretty efficient. And we just project the image onto this huge, 15-foot wide piece of Tyvek, and then trace it out, and that becomes the banner at the end. We have these big banners that we paint every year for the Masonic steps of the Masonic Temple. Hanging the banner, figuring out how to do that, and convincing the Masonic Temple to allow us to do that has been a year over year. I mean, I think they finally trust us by now, but every year we kind of have to remember how we did it the last time. Just tons of stories about sort of the ad hocness of creativity and figuring out, well, we must have done this before. How did we do that? And then it usually, comes back to us at the last minute. And numerous stories like that. There's a guy, David Presnell, who has been affiliated with Theater Bazaar for a number of years, and the Parade Company, you may know him. He's been kind of our chief fabricator, and he has created amazing pieces for us. And one year he came, he built this robot costume that was this 10-foot tall, fully articulated kind of mecha creature that the NAIN Rouge, you don't know if you remember
like the NAIN, yeah.
The NAIN. And he spent all night. He was up for 48, 72 hours, I'm not sure. And when he emerged as the NAIN Rouge, he was the one, I probably shouldn't give him away like that, but he was that. I have to give him credit for that. He was so tired by the end that he fell asleep on the flatbed truck that took him down to the end, because he had given his all to make this thing work. It is so many wonderful stories. What do you? I'd be interested to hear from you all. What if there's something that you remember, just one sort of thing from the parade that kind of sticks out.
So I really love all of the end ceremonies. Always, I love seeing that when everybody gathers around the steps. And I've usually, because like I say, I'm normally like right behind the Roche car. So I get there with enough time to basically be sitting off to the one side. And it's really great to see, Devin usually comes on.
Devin Skillian, right.
Yeah. Right. To do the banishment or the welcome, as it was last time.
Right.
I've always loved that moment, because you see everyone who is attending, and you see that mix of people, and you see all of the people who are dressed in, marching band things, the people who are the fireworkers, or the other people who work with Theater Bazaar, and those people from that, and it's just a wonderful thing. That's probably my favorite moment in the march. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say, I think for me, it's honestly the costumes. It's seeing like I love the events too. But like you mentioned the Theater Bazaar folks, and like everyone just
They're amazing.
goes all out, and the creativity. And excuse me, everybody, my Wi-Fi, Nain was hearing like is
Yeah,
here.
I feel
Not
it. Yeah,
happening,
I
y'all.
feel it.
So I'm gonna try to get this in while I can. But I love it. It's an opportunity to see homemade costumes, and anytime I can see, a bunch of kids who have like cobbled together something funky from like Batman outfits and Iron Man outfits and like pirate outfits. And it's a little different than Halloween, it's a little different than even Mardi Gras, it's got that feel of people coming together, going through their kitchen for goofy stuff. and honestly, the adults drinking as if it's spring and having
Right.
a good time, and then everybody gets to come together with this. And I miss the actual welcoming of the name, so I think I'm glad actually on that one. But I do think that that's such a wonderful moment, is just seeing everyone come together in that great kind of the banishment moment. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, you took mine. That's fine.
Yours too.
But to wrap it all up, like I can't say that there's any one individual event. It's the unification that it brings as a whole, the equalization, because it is people just grabbing what they can and making homemade costumes and literally putting their heart and souls into what they're wearing on the outside. And everybody, it's like a safe space for all the weirdos, man. And I think that a lot of us, we need that weirdo space, right? We need somewhere where we can really be unapologetically ourselves, even if it is for just one day or one event, and just go balls to the wall, all out, crazy weird. And nobody's judging you because everyone else there is the same level of weird as you. So I think that's beautiful. So to segue and take that into our final question of the evening, well, our final pre-prepared question of the evening, I think this sums everything up by asking, what do you think is the best way that we as a community can come together and support things like the NAIN, support Detroit Street Festival teams as a whole in this downtime before we can all hang together again?
Yeah, that's a great segue to what's next. And we touched on it a little bit, but I really think make sure that you have all the older friends and family vaccinated. I mean, this is pretty pragmatic, but I think just like take a step. Like Detroit has been pretty good about pushing as open and inclusive and sort of structured a way as possible. And then making sure that you do, because I think, whether, however you feel about the pandemic or the politics of the pandemic, which is so unfortunate how that has played out, ultimately it's about us trying to provide a safe place for people and give people a peace of mind that, we've done all that we can do. And I think just taking that sort of personal responsibility as best you can over the coming months, because I think it really is happening over the next few months, and getting to that place where we can sort of look around and say, okay, we're here now. Let's take this next step, and being patient and kind to each other along the way, so that we can get to this event and other events. There's so many great Detroit events that have been forced to be put on hold, and I believe that we'll get there. And I feel like it's again one of these sort of greater good, common good. What's your part of that? And making that happen. I think also, and this is not new, but part of what we've tried to do is make a message of supporting the local businesses that have supported us, to help create the parade and support the parade. So those bars and restaurants that have done carry out all of this time, keep going to them. There are ways that some of the retail businesses have opened up over the last year, and doing that to support the local retail and the businesses that really create that streetscape that we love and really cherish. Those places, those folks have really been hard hit, as I'm sure you all know. And then our creative friends, you know, the so many of them work in many of these places, and you know, have struggled themselves to make ends meet. I don't have a silver bullet answer for that, but just, you know, being aware that people have gone through quite a bit, individually, collectively, so that, you know, once we do this again, I think the catharsis will be, you know, real in a way maybe it hasn't been for some time. We're here for it, and we want to support people's journey towards that place. So I think that we have a role to play in the sort of reemergence of festivals and street vitality. So let's get there together. I'm here for it, and I want to do what I can and what we can as an organization.
Which segues nicely.
And I was going to say, there's actually, it seems that was a very, this actually relates to the next question from the audience, or last question from the audience, how we can support your efforts for this delightful experience. Is there anything we can do individually to support, you know,
absolutely.
the volunteers you mentioned?
Well, so we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so donations are tax deductible. And I guess with this latest round of COVID response, you actually can write it off over the standard deduction. So there's an extra incentive to give. I think you can donate through the website. I'll meet you on the street for a check handoff if that's what you'd like. And in terms of making the event happen, we rely so heavily on volunteers, and we usually start meeting, you know, 3-4 months out, sort of in earnest. We're talking all the time, but I think, you know, going into 2022, we may do like a fall event possibly to sort of get awareness built up again. We talked about doing some kind of fundraiser. So be on the lookout. We'll try to be active on social media about that, and you know, fill in where you feel the spirit moves you. We can always use banner painters and folks to help the crowd go along. We have wonderful volunteer support and management, and it's really, you know, a family of folks that have created this in a lot of ways. So. Look out for the website. Look out for Facebook. We do other social, but I always feel perpetually behind on that on those other fronts.
There's 5 new things coming.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Next year anyway. So yeah, no worries. And if you want to support the NAIN and find out more ways that you can do that, feel free to go ahead and check out that ticker at the bottom. Check out their website and see how you can become involved too.
Thank you. This has been awesome.
Absolutely. It's such a great event, and the more people are involved, I think, and we're all about, like, at the Ibis, we love to see groups coming together and the community working in harmony with one another. That's very much in our wheelhouse. So the question that we often ask people on Beyond the Ghostlight is often about horror.
I'm feeling very beyond the Ghostlight right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like the lighting is really great. Like as you come closer, it's like you're walking into the light, and then you're going back into the shadows. And since we're a Theater of Shadows company, that works nicely. So because we are Theater of Shadows, we often ask people about, like, you know, horror and why when they fell in love with horror. But in this case, I would say the NAIN can be a source of horror, but the NAIN can be a source of hope, or a source of, you know, the foolishness and things. So I guess what I think we'll do is we'll amend that question a little bit to, when did you first sort of fall in love with the idea of the NAIN? Like, when did you hear of that? And how did that sort of like fire you, you know?
It's a great question. Well, it just predates the first parade by 6 or 8 months. I was in law school and I was doing a paper and hating all of it, just, and it was a hard time personally, and the city was just, it was like a lot of just bad stuff going on. So this was like 2009, 2010, the financial crisis. This was as the city was kind of heading into, wouldn't be, full on bankruptcy for a number of years, but it was during the Kilpatrick administration. So it was like crisis of leadership and just feeling like we needed to shake off, this, all of these things. And, I've heard about the Nain Rouge beforehand, but during that time, I started researching some of these stories, and there were actually some old articles that I saw at that time about earlier parades in Detroit, not necessarily Marche to Nain Rouge, but that seemed to indicate an awareness of the Nain Rouge. And I read more about the Nain Rouge as a sort of story of the city. It's interesting. The Nain Rouge story, it charts back to the beginnings of the city, 1701, as I said at the onset. But it really isn't written about until like the mid 19th century, which is interesting because it was probably, maybe it was an oral tradition based on some of these stories and legends. And, we don't really know much more than that, at least what we've been able to discern. And the first writings of the Nain Rouge don't really happen until like 150 years after this sighting by Cadillac. So it's this weird sort of like question mark, this gray area of what even with these supposed sightings, what does that even mean? And it just got my mind sort of like, racing about the opportunity to revive this story, this legend, and how it really has sort of, even if it wasn't written down, documented, it spans the entire history of the city. And it's this really amazing good, evil, is it good, is it bad? It's this incredible tableau or canvas to do something with, and to tap into that seemed like, why not? And then it goes into the kind of the origin story that I was discussing earlier about like why or how Detroit's Mardi Gras, that question. So those two things sort of came together, and the Nain Rouge just seemed like this perfect vehicle for doing something unique. And we didn't make up the Nain Rouge, that existed before us, but just using the Nain Rouge in this way seemed to be like a great opportunity, a great fit. So I'm delighted. I'm so happy people use it and delight in it and are intrigued by it. And some people think it's horrifying, some people think it's amazing, some people are totally metal about it, some people are light and fluffy about it. It's just it's really great to see all of the different responses.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us. This has
Thank
been
you.
an incredible episode. Before you head out, before everyone leaves, I wanted to let you guys know of something that's coming up for the Ibis. We are actually working on a new show. It's called Gratuity Not Included, and it is a different type of show. So what we're doing is we're writing a show about the restaurant industry from people who work in the restaurant industry. Specifically, us actors who also have to, tend some bars here and there.
Absolutely.
And if you've been in the restaurant industry, you understand that it becomes a family. It becomes part of your life. You tend to be there a lot. The people you work with are actually like closer to you than your real family. That's what the industry is about. And you get stories. You get stories on stories on stories about like that one time that the bartender had to jump across the bar to do the thing. So what we're doing is taking all of those stories and creating a live show that will be airing live in the summer. at the beginning of June, and submissions are being taken on our website. So if you have worked front of the house, back of the house, management, host, doesn't matter. If you've spent some time in the restaurant industry and you got a story, go to shadowoftheibis.com/GNI and tell us your story. Write it right there. Fill out that form. If you'd like to stay anonymous, you're more than welcome to check the box. You don't even have to put your name in there if you want to stay that anonymous. If you don't want to stay anonymous, or if you do or don't want to stay anonymous, we'll put your name somewhere in something somewhere along the lines. Because the best part about this is we will be letting you guys know as it develops, as it goes on, when the next step hits. Okay, so now we're writing, and now we're going to have a workshop, and then next we're going to do casting. We're letting you know everything along the way. It's like you get to be a part of the show that you're watching.
Nice.
So yeah, so head on over to the website, tell us your stories, and we'll be looking forward to reading them.
That sounds amazing and perfect for the times. Another great reaction, creative response to what's been going on. Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on with us, Francis.
Yeah,
we really appreciate it.
It was great to meet all of you in your virtual wonderful world, and yeah, I look forward to hearing more. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.
We'll see you in 2022.
Absolutely. Thank you, Francis.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
And to all of you out there who were watching, thanks for joining us. I see you, Sabrina. I see you, Bridget. I see you, Kurt. And anybody else who I don't see you, we will see you next time, guys. So thank you for joining us on Beyond the Ghostlight.
Beyond the Ghostlight.